Have you ever felt like life is just this dark, twisting maze where everyone is basically just hopelessly lost, like you're constantly hitting dead ends?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's a huge problem right now. We are all just incredibly burned out.
Right.
And we tend to treat ourselves like raw capital. So when you view your entire life through this lens of, hyper productivity, the world feels really hostile
Yeah.
the second things don't go according to plan.
Which is exactly why I'm so excited about today's deep dive. We are looking at this really fascinating source material. It's a philosophical vignette called The Clockmaker's Philosophy of Life.
Yeah, and specifically, we're diving into a section called The Clockmaker's Secret, right?
Exactly. And what makes this source so unique is that it pairs this whimsical story about a clockmaker with a companion glossary. And the glossary takes these ordinary vocabulary words and completely redefines them.
It basically turns them into this practical blueprint for emotional resilience.
Yes. So our mission today is to sort of unpack these metaphors. We're going to see how a dusty machine, a steam kettle, and literally a pocket full of pebbles can give you a seeped blueprint for surviving modern anxiety.
It's such a brilliant structure, honestly. It doesn't just hand you like another self-help checklist. It pulls you into this narrative, which kind of disarms your cynicism right away.
Right, you just get swept up in the story.
Yeah, and then it quietly rewires how you view your reality. Like right in the opening scene, you step into the clockmaker's cluttered room, and he's just fiddling with this old steam kettle.
And he immediately rejects that exact metaphor I just brought up, the maze.
Exactly. He completely dismantles it.
Because, people are always complaining that life is a maze. And it's so easy to default to that imagery, right? You wake up, you try to navigate your inbox, you hit a snag at work.
The economy shifts on you.
Yeah, and suddenly you feel like you're just a rat bumping into walls in a puzzle someone else built. But the clockmaker says no. He suggests that life is not a maze at all. It's a grand, beautiful machine.
Which is such a vital shift. Because think about it, a maze is inherently antagonistic. It's literally built to confuse you.
Right, it wants you to fail.
Yeah. If you think you're in a maze, your baseline state is just defensive survival. You have zero agency. But a machine, especially to an artisan like a clockmaker, has a rational function.
I have to admit, though, when I first read that, I was a little skeptical. Like, calling life a machine sounds really sterile to me.
Like an assembly line.
Yeah. Like we're just cogs turning for someone else's profit. How is that any better than being a rat in a maze?
Well, it's a fair point if you're thinking of like a corporate machine. But if you look at it from the clockmaker's perspective, a machine is full of interconnected parts. And if a machine is broken or making a weird noise, you don't panic or assume the universe hates you.
Just observe it.
Right. You stop, you figure out which gear is slipping, and you repair it. You aren't a lost rat anymore. You are the mechanic.
Oh, I love that. You get your agency back. And the companion glossary actually reinforces this perfectly. It defines a maze literally like a complicated set of paths, but then it adds this incredible little permission slip.
What does it say again?
It says, it is okay to be lost in the maze of life. It basically tells you to stop panicking just because you don't have the map.
Because the map isn't the point at all. Maintaining the machinery is the point. Which brings us back to that steam kettle in the scene. He's watching the gauge so the pressure doesn't, quote, escalate too quickly.
Right, so they can have midnight tea. It seems like just a cozy detail. But the glossary redefines escalate and gauge to target our emotional regulation.
It really is a masterclass in internal boundary setting.
I instantly thought about, like, a standard Tuesday at the office. You get a vaguely worded message from your boss that just says, let's chat at 3.
Oh, absolute worst case scenario right there.
Right, that is a tiny bit of steam, but if you aren't checking your own gauge, that little worry escalates, your brain spins a whole narrative. I'm fired, I can't pay rent, my life is over.
And the kettle is just absolutely screaming by 2:45.
Yes, the pressure builds over nothing. And the text gives this brilliant advice. Check the gauge of your heart before others.
It's so true because we spend so much energy trying to control the external inputs, right? We try to stop the boss from sending the message, or we try to control traffic or micromanage our partners.
We're obsessed with everyone else's gauge.
Exactly. And the clockmaker argues that this is a total misuse of energy. You can't control the fire underneath the kettle. That's just the unpredictability of the world. You can only control your own pressure valve.
So to be a good mechanic of your own life, you have to prioritize your emotional baseline.
Precisely. And to explain how we actually perform that maintenance, how we keep the engine from overheating, The clockmaker shares this really personal childhood memory.
Right, he talks about how when he was a boy, he desperately wanted to be an alchemist.
Yeah, he really believed he could take a handful of ordinary dirty pebbles and just stir them until they miraculously turned into pure gold.
But this is where I push back a little when reading the source. Because almost right after he shares this, he calls the dream wonderfully impractical and completely useless.
He does, yeah.
So, if it's completely useless, why is it basically the cornerstone of his whole philosophy?
Well, it requires us to completely decouple the concept of value from the concept of utility.
Oh, interesting. Say more about that.
Think about our culture today. If you take up a hobby, like, I don't know, knitting or painting, what's the first thing people say to you?
Oh, you should open an Etsy shop. You should sell that.
Exactly. We are forced to monetize literally everything. If an activity doesn't produce capital, we label it useless. The clockmaker is actively subverting the burden of utility.
And the glossary backs that up too. It defines impractical as something not easy to use in real life.
Yeah.
But then it gives this directive. Don't let being impractical stop you from dreaming.
Right, because the alchemy he's talking about isn't about producing actual spendable gold.
Yeah, it redefines an alchemist as a person who tries to change ordinary things into something special. And then it drops this incredible line. It says, "You are the alchemist of your own broken heart."
It's such a profound shift. It puts the power of emotional repair entirely in your hands because, look, life is going to hand you ordinary, rough pebbles. You're going to face rejection, grief, or even just the crushing boredom of a Tuesday.
Those are dirty pebbles.
Yeah. And emotional alchemy is taking that raw, heavy pain and stirring it until it transforms into something else. Empathy or meaning or art, even dark humor.
So the impractical dream of a kid is actually the most essential survival mechanism an adult can have.
Exactly.
But okay, practically speaking, how do you actually do that? Because turning a profound loss into meaning sounds great on a bumper sticker, but it's incredibly hard in real life.
It is really hard, but the clockmaker doesn't leave us hanging. He gives us a tangible method, modeled by his own father.
The daily ritual by the window.
Yes. Every morning, his father would sit by the window and meticulously write down the songs of the birds in this little leather notebook. He was transcribing the music of the morning.
The clockmaker calls it his father's daily homage to the world. But he admits that, as a young man, he totally didn't get it. He didn't understand the anatomy of his father's happiness.
Which is fair, right?
Totally. I mean, honestly, if I saw someone spending an hour every morning transcribing bird chirps instead of paying bills or checking the news, I'd probably think they were avoiding reality.
Well, think about our version of a morning ritual today. We wake up and immediately doom scroll on our phones. We literally ingest the anxieties of the entire globe before we even get out of bed.
We let the world program our machine for the day.
Exactly. So the father's ritual was actually this radical act of choosing his own input. And the specific vocabulary the text uses here is key.
Yeah, I love the vocabulary here. Take the word transcribe. Usually it just means copying something down. But the text redefines it as an emotional imperative. It says, try to transcribe your messy feelings into soft words.
That right there is the alchemy in action. There's an actual psychological concept for this called affect labeling.
Oh, wait, really? How does that work?
So when you feel an overwhelming emotion like this heavy dread, your brain's amygdala is just firing like crazy. It's pure chaos. But the moment you force yourself to transcribe that feeling into specific words, you engage your prefrontal cortex.
So you force the brain to analyze it instead of just panicking.
Right. By naming it, by saying, I'm not in physical danger, I'm just feeling insecure about a comment my coworker made, you actually dial down your physiological stress response. You literally gain mastery over the feeling.
You take the heavy pebble of dread and turn it into the gold of self-awareness.
Exactly.
And that connects right to the text's definition of anatomy. It doesn't mean bones and muscles. It means learning how your soul is put together so you can actually love yourself.
Because you can't repair a machine if you don't understand its anatomy. Nor can you respect it.
Which brings us to the word homage. The glossary says it's not about paying respect to a king. It says, pay a silent homage to the person you have become.
That's a really uncomfortable thing for a lot of people to do, honestly.
It really is. We're so conditioned to just endlessly criticize ourselves for the milestones we haven't hit yet. We never pause to respect the version of ourselves that actually survived all the bad jobs and broken hearts to get here.
It requires you to intentionally step out of the maze. The father wasn't avoiding reality. He was tending to his own anatomy. And the way he balanced that maintenance with the real world brings us to my absolute favorite metaphor in the text.
Oh, the peninsula theory.
Yes. The clockmaker realizes that his father lived his life like a peninsula.
The visual for this is so striking. He describes his father as being firmly attached to the mainland on one side. And the mainland represents all those heavy, necessary realities of adulthood, right? Your mortgage, your job, your family duties.
The things that ground you. But a peninsula is only attached on one side. On the other three sides, the father was surrounded by a vast, sparkling ocean of imagination.
He was connected to the mundane world, but always touching the infinite.
Exactly.
I think this directly calls out the modern crisis we have with hustle culture. We're constantly told we have to make this binary choice.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like either you live entirely landlocked deep in the mainland, working 60 hours a week and abandoning all your creative passions, or you detach completely and become an island.
Right, you quit your job, become a starving artist, and risk floating away into total delusion.
But the peninsula theory obliterates that false choice. It argues for integration.
Yeah.
You need the mainland to pay your bills, sure, but you cannot survive if you are landlocked.
You need that ocean of imagination. You need the impractical hobbies, the quiet daydreaming to keep your engine from overheating. The mainland gives stability, but the ocean gives vitality.
It is hard to maintain that balance, though, when the mainland is constantly demanding more of your time. The clockmaker even admits that when he was young, focused on his career, he looked at his dad staring out the window and thought it was a massive waste of time.
Which is the ultimate tragedy of a utility-obsessed culture. We view rest as a waste. But the emotional climax of the story flips this entirely.
Yeah, after the father passes away.
Right. The clockmaker has this profound realization about legacy. He realizes that his father's quote-unquote wasted time had actually become the absolute core of his own life.
He says the tea, the birds, the quiet observation, they are now the bread and water for his spirit.
It completely reframes what we leave behind for the people we love. When you're gone, your kids aren't going to be comforted by your optimized workflow. They don't care how many emails you answered.
They inherit your emotional baseline.
Exactly. They inherit your capacity for wonder. The father sat by his ocean of imagination, and by doing that, he taught his son how to swim in it.
And the glossary grounds this in the word staple. Literally, it means a basic part of something. But the hidden lesson is, kindness should be the main staple of your daily life.
And in this context, the kindness wasn't just how he treated others. It was the kindness he showed himself by taking time to transcribe the birds.
That internal kindness became the staple that sustained his son years later. Tending to your own machine isn't selfish.
Not at all. It's how you ensure you have something of actual value to pass down.
So as the story comes full circle, the clockmaker brings us back to his cluttered room. The kettle hasn't boiled over, he checks his gauge, the needle is steady, and he is safe.
He's living the philosophy in real time. And then he offers this incredibly reassuring thought to the reader. He says, even if you feel like a lonely peninsula tonight, remember the same ocean that surrounds you is the one that connects us all.
It's so easy to feel isolated by your specific mainland, your bills, your specific problems. But the ocean, our capacity to feel pain, to dream, to seek wonder that is universal.
We're entirely individual in our practical struggles, but we are deeply unified in our emotional machinery. We all have an inner alchemist.
And after dropping all of this profound philosophy, the clockmaker does something so brilliant. He doesn't just leave us floating out in the existential ether. He gestures to the tea he just poured and simply asks, now, how do you take your sugar?
It's the perfect grounding mechanism. It pulls you right back to reality. It's a small, practical act of care, the staple of kindness in action.
So if you take nothing else away from this deep dive, remember this. You are not trapped in a maze. You do not have to spend your life panicking and hitting dead ends. You are the mechanic of a beautiful, intricate machine.
You have the tools. You have your emotional gauge to monitor the pressure. You have the ability to be a peninsula, balancing your responsibilities with your imagination.
And you have your inner alchemist to take those heavy, painful pebbles and transcribe them into something meaningful. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today. Something that builds on everything we've talked about.
Oh, I'm curious.
Think all the way back to the very first line of the story. When we step into the room, the clockmaker says, don't mind the clutter. We spend massive amounts of energy trying to clean up, hide, or apologize for the clutter in our lives, right?
Yeah. We're deeply ashamed of our messy feelings or our false starts.
Exactly. We view our impractical hobbies or our mistakes on the mainland as garbage that needs to be swept away so we can look perfect. But based on the secret of the clockmaker, what if that clutter isn't garbage at all?
Right.
What if your failures, your anxieties, and your impractical dreams are actually just the raw, unassembled materials? What if they're just sitting there on the floor, waiting for you to pick them up, fire up the machine, and turn them into gold?